Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Nick, your host of On the Scene with Martini. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and don't forget, you are the scene. Hey guys, what's up? It's Nick, on the scene with Martini. Today I have Mike, frontman, DC native from Damnation A.D. and When Tigers Fight. How are you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much. We just had a little chit chat before we started and kind of got a little carried away with the time. I appreciate you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank
This
you for
is
having me.
this is my first interview with someone that was like a native and pretty influential in the DC hardcore scene. So this is going to be a fun one for me because I'm definitely going to learn a lot, and I know a lot of my viewers are too.
Yeah, DC is, there's so many different ways to look at it. You have like Discord stuff, then you have some regular hardcore and positive force stuff. So I don't know. DC was always a fascinating place.
I want to get started just kind of how I always do with my guests, and just like kind of give your introduction to music in general, and then your kind of how you got into the hardcore scene.
Okay. So I originally, most people get into like hardcore and punk through metal, but I found it through new wave. My friend and I were just really into like, Pretty in Pink soundtrack. Like that would be like if you could have one like list of bands, that would be it. Like, any band on there, Depeche Mode, The Cure, stuff like that. And we got into it because his sister was very much into music, and we've learned about it from her. And then, kind of led to, well, she had a boyfriend. This guy name was Glenn, and he was in a band called At Wit's End. And he started giving us more of like the punk stuff. He would some like DC stuff. He made us a mix that had Embrace, Rites of Spring, Minor Threat, 7 Seconds. And the really cool thing about that is, he was kind of he would not like sit us down and tell us like, oh, the lyrics are so important, but he would type out the lyrics, like on
Hmm.
one of those old school typewriters to every song.
Oh, that's cool.
And, so along with this tape, we would have all these songs. And, just imagine like, a 40 or 90-minute tape, 45 minutes on each side, like how many songs he sat there and typed out the lyrics for. But, he really encouraged us to pay attention to the lyrics, like how punk music was a little bit different than new wave in terms of because the lyrics really meant something. So through him, we started getting more into like the DC style punk. And then just by chance, I met this skinhead who lived up the street from me. He was from New Zealand, and he got us more into like the more like English punk, exploited GBH, English Dogs, like stuff like that. And so suddenly, I had not only the DC influence stuff, but I had like English punk and and then Dead Kennedy, stuff like that. And so that's where I think my brother really started uh listening, because I think he got more into like the punk, like the heavier punk stuff. So it was like the like perfect timing for everything. So my friend Tim and I, his sister and her boyfriend was giving us music, and then Jason, the skinhead from down the street, was giving us music because it was, yeah, it was at the time like they were so excited to share something with younger kids who were really looking forward to some checking out something. So at the time, I was probably like when we first started listening, I was 11 and my brother was 9. And then, just kind of like started picking up, little bits. And then, in terms of like they would turn us on to bands. And then there was a couple local record stores. And I just think it's so funny now because I would either ride my bike down to this area, Georgetown.
Mhm.
There was a record store called Smash, and I would go and I would like just kind of hang out there for like most of the day and wait for a punk looking person to come in and then go stand next to them and see what they were looking at. And, and then just like eventually, I just started finding out more stuff, so I would find out what they were looking for and then go and order it from Maxim Rock and Roll. Um, but yeah, so that's how we really got started in it. We just had some incredible people who were really giving with their time and their energy and wanting to share this incredible music with a couple young annoying kids. And so yeah, I'm so thankful for that. And that's we kind of touched on this before when we were talking before about straight edge and stuff, and how if I can be the slightest influence to like a younger kid, because, even though I'm not really part of the scene anymore, I don't go out as much anymore, I still think it's such a beautiful thing. Like it's such an incredible family. And so if I can share that with anybody, I love being able to do that.
Yeah, we were talking earlier too, and I want to touch on it again so everyone can hear about it. You were 12 when you made the decision to be straight edge. The that kind of movement has been out for a few years uh, at that point. Where was there, what was like not the selling point, but what made you want to be straight edge? Because at that time you said sixth grade?
Yeah, so well, the first time I remember, because I went to a Catholic school and it was the last day of school, and we were at my friend's house, and it was like pretty much the whole class was there. And I remember we had like a shaving cream fight, and someone got a hold of a beer. And then, suddenly, everyone's taking like a sip of the beer and acting like they're drunk, immediately, like barely touches their lips and suddenly they're drunk. And I just remember thinking, like, I am not, I'm not gonna, that's not what I want. And, so I didn't really know what the, well, I should say, like, my idea of straight edge back then was like, I'm not going to be like all these kids. I didn't necessarily know why, but I was bullied and I was always made fun of. But I knew I didn't want to be like them for many different reasons. But at that moment, I had just heard, oh, in addition to like 7 Seconds, all those other bands, Youth of Today, he had put the Youth of Today 7 inch on there. And so, I was aware of straight edge. And so that was like the moment. And I have to find this picture because I remember it's me covered in whipped cream or shaving cream, and I have a tiny black X on my hand. I have to find that somewhere. I haven't thought about that in years, but I remember seeing it. And it's so telling, that okay, 12 years old, and I'll be 52 in February, and I'm like, wow, this is something that I still believe in. I just feel so lucky to have found it. And so I'm so thankful to like everyone who kind of led me down that path, because without it, who knows what kind of life I'd be living. And I had a bunch of years where I really struggled, but I've always had I've always had like the music and straight edge to kind of use as my guide to, okay, this is who I want to be. I know I don't always know where I want to be in life, but I know who I want to be. And so that's where I'm lucky, where straight edge has I've used that as my guide, and I'm really thankful for that.
Did you have like other friends? Like obviously you're talking about your, what was it, sister's boyfriend or brothers?
No, it was my one of my closest friends in grade school,
Hmm.
his sister's boyfriend.
Sister's boyfriend.
Yes.
Besides him, was there anyone else like your age that was also straight edge, or was it kind of just like you were telling your story about it to others? Like it wasn't like a whole thing.
No, so we went to a Catholic school that had like, I think 20 people in our grade.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah.
so it was just him and I who were getting into music. Everyone else was like doing their own thing. So it was just the two of us who were really getting into it. And then like once, but I also had this friend Eric, who lived right next to me. So he was like one of my only friends outside of school, and I kind of started introducing him to some of the stuff, and he really got into it also. But again, at the time, I wasn't aware of why I wanted to be straight edge so much as like, okay, this is something that's really cool. I can hold on to it, and it's something like, almost like one of those kids is not like the others. Like I had a lot of frustration towards a lot of the kids that I was friendly with in school because I was bullied for so long, and I knew I just didn't want to be a part of their group or anyone that was associated with them. So I kind of was aware back then that I kind of have to choose my own path.
When you were younger, when did you start going to like shows, or was that pretty quickly?
Yeah, so I went to my first one when I was 13. And so I was, yeah, so this was 1987. And I remember, it was, school was out, and I was walking down the street and saw that guy, Jason, that I had mentioned before, the New Zealand guy. And he was like, hey, I'm going to see 7 Seconds tonight. Do you want to go? And I was like, okay, like I have to go ask my mom,
Yeah.
and she loved him. He was only a couple years older than I was, but just like really just a wonderful person. And so yeah, I asked my mom, and she was like, okay, I guess you can. And so we went, and it was like the most amazing experience of my life. And then one of the things that's really cool is that Ken, who ended up playing for Battery and Damnation, and um, he he was at that show. That was his first show also. So we, didn't know each other, but had a bunch of, because there was a couple people who I went to high school with that I didn't really, well, because I wasn't in high school yet, but eventually went to high school with him. Like he was in
Hmm.
bands with them. And so we had like this group of people like that we were with the same group of people, we just didn't know each other. So and then a couple of years later we become friends. And but yeah, so like that was my first show, 7 Seconds, Justice League. And then like a couple weeks later, Uniform Choice played with Moral Discipline and Soul Side and Flaming Lips. And then I brought my brother to that, and
That's
I
awesome.
remember, he was 11 at the time. He was a really small kid. Um, and I remember like a couple of the people like picking him up and passing him around like for a stage dive. And I run up and I pull him down. I'm like, if you get hurt, mom's not going to let us come back. And, so that's me looking out for my younger brother. But
Yeah.
yeah, so, but, I think it was after that, it was just one of those things where we were like, wow, we found this family environment, that like really accepted us for who we were, where, our home life was really, really chaotic and just angry. There was really no communication at home. It was all just communicated through anger. And so we found this thing that was kind of like we could relate to, in terms of it was like a little bit chaotic, and it kind of felt like home. And I just remember, I was in therapy, and, well, we were supposed to go as a family, but I ended up going alone. And I remember listening to Dead Kennedys, and the therapist asking, like, do you know what they're saying? Like, and it was just, and I was like, no, but they sound angry, and like, I can relate to that. And
Hmm.
So yeah, so it was just one of those things where I was like, wow, I feel like I can really relate to all these people here and felt like, wow, this is like my place. And it just so after that just kept going. And yeah, again, I don't go to shows as often anymore. I mean, especially because how expensive they are. I can't
Yeah.
believe like what happened to the $5 show. But it's just, yeah, I've spent so many years afraid of being alone and afraid of like downtime, but now I embrace that more. But it's something that I just still think is such a wonderful, like the hardcore and punk music scene is just such a wonderful thing.
Yeah. When you, so like when I went to my first show, I kind of had a general idea of what to expect, like the hitting and the moshing. When you're that young and there wasn't a ton of like, videos out there, like what was your like first reaction when you walk into the room and you see like all the moshing and stuff?
I mean, I was scared to death.
Yeah, me
So
too.
it because the only thing that I think I was even like was remotely gave me an idea of what to expect was watching there was a movie called DOA, and it's not like the high budget movie, the actual movie. It was more of this was a documentary about like English punk and Sex Pistols' first US tour. So like, and I saw kind of like punk bands playing in that, and then there was a movie called Suburbia, and TSOL was in there and DOA, and so that's I was like, oh, okay, I kind of see what it might be like. But then going and being in the actual room, and it was at this place 930 Club in DC, and the capacity was like 199, well, the official capacity, but they used to pack people in so much. And I just stood with my back to the wall in the very back. Like I could, if I could have merged into the wall, I would have, because I was terrified. But luckily, the guy I went with and a couple of his friends kept checking on me, making sure I was okay. And it was like the coolest. I just think I remember thinking like this is the coolest thing ever. And then seeing all the stage diving. And it was so much different than now because it was more like you didn't have that horseshoe thing. It was more people just up front singing along and stage diving. Like it wasn't,
Like the hitting and the killing and stuff.
yeah. And that's one of the things where I don't like going to like seeing heavy bands because I hate seeing that stuff because that to me is I hate it. So I don't go to like anything heavy anymore just because I hate seeing that stuff. It really to me that's not what hardcore is about. Like
Hmm.
so yeah, but I think yeah, aside from those movies, I had no idea what to expect. But at the time, I was like, "This is so cool!" And trying to going home and trying to explain to my mom what happened. Like, "Oh my God, there was people jumping off the stage," and it was wild. So definitely the coolest experience of my life.
It's when you said about how like you don't like going to like the heavy shows all the time because of the crowd killing, I probably am like one of the few people that totally agree with you. Like to me, like when we talk about like hardcore and stuff, it's kind of I don't know, like hardcore and punk to me sometimes is an ironic genre because people from the outside see it as hateful and scary and stuff, but in reality, like a lot of the songs are about like coming together and like
Yeah.
hanging out and having a good time and taking care of each other. So like it's always like ironic when you have like youth of today, then like someone's like punching. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. It's like everything that they spoke for then, like, and I know at those shows in like the 90s and stuff, it wasn't like that because when I always like asking that question to people in the 90s scene because the answers are always so different from when I interview like a ton of like the new age guys. So I don't know. It's just a thought. It's very interesting to see like kind of how the moshing and hardcore scene has changed in that regards to me.
Yeah, and I really think it's become very narcissistic in terms of like, okay, this is about me. Like,
Hmm.
where dancing, if you're on the dance floor, like, and you're dancing and someone gets hit, whatever, that's fine. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
But if you're running back and forth punching, you're just an asshole. Like,
Yeah.
there's honestly, I don't see any other way to like it's just so like again it's so narcissistic, like look at me, this is all about me and I don't care who gets hurt.
Yeah.
And so for people who do that, I'm just like I and it's people who know they have backup, like who know they have a lot of friends. It can never, and because then you have a kid who sees that, emulates it, they attempt it, then they get the shit beat out of them because they don't have any friends there, but they were just doing what they thought was accepted and expected. And so yeah, I just hate how it's only like the cool kids can get away with it. It's just, yeah, it's like, and no one is, there's like a certain people who get away with it. No one speaks up. No one's ever calls people out. And it's just, yeah, I can't. I fucking, and again, I'm not really part anymore, so I shouldn't really say anything, but it's really disappointing. And that's why I enjoy going and seeing a band like Anxious. We were
Hmm.
talking about them before, Fiddlehead. Like Touche Amore is one of my favorite bands, like, and my brother's band Be Well. Like I'm love, because it's more of like a togetherness.
Hmm.
You have a lot of people dancing, a lot of people stage diving, but it's like it's more about being together, like a scene, instead of like, oh, look at me, like I'm bigger than everyone else, or I have more friends here, so I can just run and punch someone in the face. Like and yeah, it's just not something I'm into. I've never been into that, but if you're on the dance floor and people are doing it, that's fine because you kind of expect it. But when you're running side to side and just punching whoever's standing there, like
Yeah. You're going
I,
out of your way to do
yeah,
it.
yeah, so I fucking hate it, and I
Yeah.
think whoever does this is an asshole, and yeah,
I
so.
totally agree with you. I totally agree. So I want to go into Damnation AD. Obviously, that's like the band that, to me, when we met, just for a little backstory for the viewers, we went to the Earth Crisis Judge Integrity Show in Combust at Underground Arts, and Mike went up for the Earth Crisis towards like the end to sing, and I was like, I don't want to be like the asshole to say like, who are you? Because I'm still again newer to the scene, and I had no clue. And then I was like, I'm not going to ask him. And then I don't know, it was kind of like a weird thing. We parked right next to each other. So then I was like, I've been wanting to ask you for the past half hour, who are you? And then we started talking about Damnation and stuff. And I listened to it on my ride home, and it really, really spoke to me. I don't know why, because like I've listened to a ton of 90s hardcore, but to me, one of the things that I absolutely loved about it, and we're going to get into Damnation as a whole, was how long the songs are. I like something about that I really enjoyed because hardcore, they're a minute and a half. Some of your songs are 7.5.
Yeah.
Like like you have your No More Dreams of Happy Endings. I have it pulled up is 11 songs, 56 minutes. So like to me, like that was like a new thing. And I like listening to an album as a whole. I'm an album guy. Like I'm not a song guy. I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm going to listen to Sleep. Like I
Yeah.
want to listen from 1 to 10, 11, 12.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really appreciate that. So I just wanted to make that comment, but I want to get into how Damnation AD formulate it, and go from there.
Well, so I was lucky enough. So I mentioned Ken earlier, and so Ken was in a band with a guy who I went to high school with. He was in a band called Strength in Numbers, um, and so I was kind of aware of them. But then my brother was my brother was dating the drummer's sister. And so my brother ended up at their practices. And then, so that's how I kind of met Ken, is through my brother. So they did Strength in Numbers. And then they were starting another band. Um, and my brother used to just go and like hang out at their practices. He was probably 12 or 13 at the time, and had no, and, Ken's in high school, like 16, 17. And so Brian just ended up hanging out at their practices. They didn't have a singer. So when they went to the studio to record the demo, the guy was like, yo, why don't you just, this kid sings at your practices, just get him to lay something down. And it was actually really good. Well, for a 13-year-old kid. And so by Brian doing that, I kind of became friendly with Ken. Battery kind of faded away, and they stopped playing for a little bit because Brian started a band called Ashes. And then Ken started a band called Worlds Collide. And so I roadied for Worlds Collide for pretty much their whole existence. And then once Worlds Collide, we knew they were kind of coming to an end. Ken and I had talked about, like, oh man, we want to do a straight edge band that's heavier than Judge. And so that was like our goal, is like to do like this really heavy straight edge band. And we recorded some stuff, just the two of us. He did all the instruments himself, and I just did vocals. And then we were like, okay, how are we going to get this going? And like, we had our friend Alex, who lived with us at the time, and he went on the last Worlds Collide tour. And then he was going to play bass, and then we couldn't find a guitarist. So we were like, well, we'd rather really like the people we're playing with than limit it to a straight edge band, because we weren't singing about straight edge anyway. Like, that was one of the things he and I both agreed on, is like, we don't like songs that are necessarily about straight edge. Like, it's like singing into a mirror. So we decided, like, you know what, we'd rather just have a fun band and really love who we play with. So the bassist from Worlds Collide joined on guitar. So at the time it was me, Alex on bass, Hillel on guitar, and Ken on drums. And Ken's not really one to be behind the scenes, like he wants to be up front. So we ended up finding a drummer, and Ken joined on guitar also. So we had, and so yeah, it really, we were like, okay, we want to do a straight edge band, but then realize, like, yeah, loving who we're playing with is more important than having a straight edge band. So we ended up getting Hillel, and then that's where it went from there.
When you guys first started, when I was doing like my little research, I do very minimal because I want to try to keep it as raw as possible. But I was reading that when you and Ken started, it was like a studio project.
Mhm.
When you first went into the studio with Ken, was there a moment where you were like, okay, I want this to be more than that before you started, like I want to go on tour, I want to release a record, or at that time was it just kind of like you're recording with a buddy to see how it goes?
Yeah, that was pretty much it, because I have never looked at myself as a musician. Like, I just don't have there's people like Ken and my brother and Hillel, like, it pretty much, they all can hear something and like turn it into a song. I just can't. So pretty much, Damnation, and everyone's always like, well, you have to give yourself a little more credit, but it's not necessary. Like, or Damnation is basically Ken directing me, like, okay, this is what I want you to do. And I'm okay with that, because he's so brilliant. And he knows me better than I know myself. So a lot of times with like the lyrics, I would just give him pages of lyrics, and he would formulate them, because in his head he can kind of hear a song. He can hear the finished product as he's writing it. He is like, he's just, yeah, he's so talented. So, uh, but yeah, I really never thought about it much. Aside from, wait 1 second, sorry,
No, no, no worries.
my work stuff is going off. Sorry.
No worries.
Okay, here we go. Um, so, yeah, I never thought more past like, oh, cool, this is going to be fun. And I always just thought, okay, I'm going to be a roadie and sell t-shirts and so, but then it just kind of became like, oh wow, I can do this. And my big thing was I loved hardcore and I loved meeting hardcore kids. So I loved to tour and to travel um and it was so that yeah, basically that's all I wanted to do was like meet other hardcore kids and talk about music. Whereas those guys really had a good idea of, we want this band to succeed and we can really see a future if we do it right, because they were thinking of the bigger scale where I'm just like, I just want to play a basement, and go sleep on someone's floor and go to the next town. And basically and one of the reasons Damnation didn't do more than we did was because I just didn't see it. And I always think that they would have been better off with a different person. Um, and I think I added my piece to the band, but I think with someone else who was more who had more direction and was more music musically inclined, they could have done so much more. And so that does eat at me a lot because I think of how talented they are, and I really felt like I held them back. So that's something that's really difficult for me because yeah, because I think like, wow, they could have made music their futures, but I I limited them.
Hmm. I mean, was there like a point too where you guys were playing that you had a thought that you guys like you wanted to go further, or was it kind of just like you wanted to keep it like very DIY basements, very like non-corporation style?
Yeah, and and I never saw past, so a good example was when we did our two records with Jade Tree, and then they were kind of going in a different direction, so we were looking for a label, and we had interest from Revelation, and all I could think of is that Rev Star on something with my name on it. Like I couldn't see past that. Where those guys are thinking, well, if we went with a label that had more money, more like more influence or whatever, we could play with bigger bands.
Hmm.
Um, we could do more. And I just couldn't see past the Rev Star. And so don't get me wrong, like I'm so happy with what we did, but it goes back to, yeah, if they had someone who was more thinking the bigger scale, we would have done a lot more.
Was there any a point of time too with you were saying how you and Ken were straight edge, right?
Mhm.
When other band members not being straight edge, did you ever find that an issue at all?
There were a couple instances just because, when people are drunk or doing drugs, it can change the dynamic. And then especially if you're out on a long tour, everyone's, we would be in we had a 15 passenger van that sat five people because we had a loft built and no AC. We had a stereo that had one speaker. Like we were just, it was rough. And so if you're out for 5, 6 weeks at a time, like middle of summer or middle of winter, and it's just like you're sleeping on floors, the van's hot, it just, the one thing you don't want is like an angry drunk person next to you or someone who is like belligerent at the end of the night when you're trying to sleep. So I think that those things crept in a couple times. But at the same time we were so young that it was like it didn't. it didn't bother me as much as say it would now. Where it was just kind of like, whatever, you know what? I'm just gonna go sleep in the van, or like a couple, I'm gonna go just sleep on the, on the pavement, like in the parking lot, because I just need some space. And yeah, so at the time, like there was never at any point where it was like, okay, you're done, or I'm done because of this. It was kind of annoying, but yeah, it didn't really make that much of an impact.
When you guys were touring, I was looking at like old flyers and stuff, and obviously you had the advantage of having Brian like being in Battery. I saw that you guys toured a little bit. How was the touring dynamic back then? Did you guys have like a manager at all? Was there kind of you and Ken or
All Ken.
all
Ken
Ken?
pretty much, yep, Ken did everything. And it's so funny because I talk about this with Brian now because his band Be Well, he has to do a lot of the stuff himself, and it made him appreciate how much work Ken put into everything in terms of booking shows, making sure the van was up to date on like getting fixed, and like booking by printing t-shirts, like he handled everything. And I think about it so much now, and how much I took that for granted. And but yeah, he pretty much, for every band he did, Battery, Damnation, when he was in Better Than 1,000, like he was the guy who did everything. And he still is, because if anybody asks, like, hey, will you guys play a show? I'm like, I'm out of it. Talk to Ken. If he just tell me when and where and when to be there, and I'll be there, but I'm not getting involved with anything else, because I think I'm more flexible than most people. And they yeah, so but yeah, he always took care of everything. We had a booking agent for one tour, but that was it.
Do you find it difficult like when you do your shows now? Do you find it because you guys aren't like actively touring all the time? Do you find it difficult to be able to like scream and sing?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely not as easy, because that's something that it's kind of like doing a workout. Like if you work out once a month, or once every couple months, you're going to be feeling it, and you're
Hmm.
not going to be able to go as hard. Like on tour, there was times where we'd play two shows in a day and it'd be no problem. And whereas now it's like I'm like, okay, the next day I'm taking off because I can barely talk, and it's just a mess. But yeah, it's definitely harder now. And so we'll usually practice like 3 or 4 times before we play a show, and usually like about a week, once a week, leading up to a show. Um, and that's still not enough. So if we were going to do more than one show at a time, I would definitely need to like go somewhere and just scream. Even not even the songs necessarily, like that doesn't matter, because our set doesn't vary all that much. We know the songs people want to hear, and so we just pretty much do those. But yeah, it would just be like, just to get my voice ready, just go like sit in my car and like an abandoned parking lot, and just scream a little bit for a couple days leading up to it.
Sorry. So like fast forward to like the early 2000s, you started When Tigers Fight.
Mhm.
Why what made you want to start When Tigers Fight instead of going back to the original Damnation?
Um, I forget how I became. I was living in Massachusetts, and my friend JD, he was in The Promise and Unholy. He had done a bunch of bands. He reached out and he was like, "Hey, I'd love to write something with you." And I was like, okay. And so I think it was just the opportunity was never there before. And so for that, when we did that 7 inch, it was just JD and I. And I went to Ken had a studio at the time. So I went down and did vocals, and I had kind of dropped off the face of the earth for a few years, and so I hadn't seen him in a long time, so it was really great getting together with him. And then that's where, so we did the 7 inch where I just recorded with Ken, and then we did a full length because Ken was like, yo, I want to start writing. Um, and then so that brought Ken into When Tigers Fight, and then also got us talking about doing Damnation again because Hillel wasn't around. Alex was still around and wanting to play. Um, and we just, so yeah, it just kind of brought up the conversation and reconnected Ken and I.
I know now you say you don't go to shows as much, but when you kind of had that period of like hiatus, did you still go to shows and were you active in the scene, or was it kind of like when Damnation ended, you needed to step away too?
No, so depending on where I lived, like I was in Richmond for a while and I would go to shows up there, or go down there as much as I could. And then I was in Massachusetts and I would go, not as often, because yeah, it's just like as you get older, you're working more. And I was also working at Starbucks at the time. And so I'd have to get up super early in the morning. Um, and then I also just couldn't afford to go out all that much. So a lot of my shows were I would call up my brother and be like, "Hey, can you get me in?" So he spent many years making phone calls for me. But yeah, I mean, I would go as much as I can. And there's I still love seeing live music. But yeah, I would it was just one of those things. I just wasn't as involved as I was when I was a younger kid and had a lot more free time, a lot more flexibility, all of that.
In 2007, you put out In This Life or the Next. When you were recording, what was it, 2006 when Ghost Story came out with When Tigers Fight? Did you like the second When Tigers Fight was over, that album, were you like, okay, Damnation needs to come back? Me and Ken are finally like reunited? Or was there still kind of like talks like, I don't know if people want to hear it or
No, I think there was just some interest, and knowing that Ken and I could had so much fun working together, it was just like, hey, why not?
yeah.
And JD was doing his band, The Unholy. And then um, he was pretty far away, and so it was like Ken and I just decided like, hey, why not just try this and see what happens. We had so much fun working together. We could still sound pretty good when we played. So we were just like, let's give it a shot, see what happens. And so what we did for that record, it was more of one of those things where we made a conscious effort to re-record some of the songs we had previously done, because it was going to be kind of like a reintroduction, or it was going to be an introduction to newer people, like songs that we typically played, and then some new songs, so to like reintroduce ourselves. And then it was just like, wow, the music industry had changed a lot already, and it was suddenly like, wow, this is a lot harder in terms of, okay, we all have responsibilities. Like it was just not affordable. We couldn't yeah, that was basically it. We just couldn't afford to do it. So, it was like, okay, well, we're not going to do this full time, but let's leave the options open, and just if we can do it, we will. If not, then um, we've had a lot of fun doing it. But luckily we just get together every couple of years, and I still feel like when we play, we played a little over 2 years ago, and that was one of the funnest shows I think I felt like, wow, we sounded good. A lot of our friends were there. Um, we could still perform on a good level. Where you see some bands who are older and they just don't sound as good. And we never jumped around, or so like it's not like we were like, oh wow, those guys just stand there and do nothing, because we never moved around that much to begin with. But
Yeah.
I think like Ken and having Hillel back, I met Hillel when I was like probably like 14 on the bus, taking the bus to the mall. Like, and so I've known Hillel like forever too. And it's like it just felt so amazing being back in the same room with those guys. It's just such a incredible feeling.
When you guys were recording that, I was reading, and I don't know if this is true, but there was members from other bands that kind of like did little parts into the album.
Yeah, so like I had taken a long time off from music, but I still loved it. And like, so what I wanted to do is include some of the people who really inspired me to start writing again. So we got a couple of the guys from Fall Out Boy, John Henry from Darkest Hour, Carl from Earth Crisis, Wes from American Nightmare, because those were like some of my favorite bands at the time, and people who were really encouraged me, like, you should do this, like you should play again. And so since we were able to work on that on our own, like Ken flew out to, I forget, Ken, like with the Fallout Boy guys, like he flew out to LA. Wes was on tour and like I forget exactly how it worked, but it worked out perfectly,
Yeah.
where we were able to get. And those are just, some of my favorite musicians and really inspire me. And so that's why I wanted to get them on there. Especially like, with Fallout Boy, like, because there's pictures of those guys like from when they're like 15, 16 years old up front singing along for us in Chicago. And then they're like one of the biggest bands out there. And I was just like,
Yeah.
and they were just such wonderful people. Like the first time I saw Fall Out Boy, I was like, their record had just come out, and they're like, he's like, he goes, Petey goes, this is song's called No More Dreams of Happy Endings, and everyone screams, but no one knows what that is.
Yeah.
But he was just, and those guys are just such wonderful people. And yeah, and like Darkest Hour, we brought them on our first tour, or their first tour, and I was so proud of how much they'd done. And Earth Crisis, always loved them, and American Nightmare I just fucking love. So yeah, I
Yeah.
just I wanted to really, like, that was my thank you to all of those guys.
So wait, just go back for a second. You brought Fall Out Boy on their first tour or one of their like
No,
quad?
Darkest Hour.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay, I got you, got
Darkest
you.
Hour. The Fall Out Boy guys, like, there's pictures of them up front when we played Chicago,
Yeah,
when they're
yeah.
like young kids. And, it's just really
That's
cool.
awesome. Yeah. It's like little Easter eggs like that that like I really enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah, we're really lucky, and that's one of the really neat things. So, my wife has been into hardcore, since the early 90s, and some of her favorite bands I've introduced her to, like Earth Crisis, Snapcase, Fall Out Boy, like she really. And it's great because any band, I'm like, okay, really want you to meet them, like the really good people, and that she gets to meet these bands, and they're just wonderful people.
Hmm.
And she's like, you nail it every time you tell me what they're going to be like, and they're always. It just makes me feel good that so many of these bands that she grew up listening to, um, they're just like wonderful people, and I'm just so proud of them.
Did you meet her in the hardcore scene or was it just lucky that you guys were pretty similar in music taste?
No, so we, like it was one of those things, like we were on each other's radar, and we probably met years ago, and then just connected on Instagram,
Oh, really?
just
That's awesome.
randomly. And so yeah, it was just uh then, but we'd probably met because we have so many of the same mutual friends. Like my brother lived in Boston and she lived in Connecticut, so we had a lot of mutual acquaintances back then.
Hmm.
So probably met at some point. But then yeah, just kind of connected, and it's been, we been together for about 9 years now. So it's been, yeah, I feel so lucky.
That's awesome. That's awesome how that works out.
Yeah, it's incredible.
2017, you guys put out the Cure pornography kind of like cover like
Yeah.
from front to back. What made you, I know you said that you like new wave and stuff. What made you pick that album to do that? And then like what kind of like sparked because you guys didn't put out an album in like I don't know, like 8, 9 years at that point. What kind of sparked like let's do a cover album?
Well, so that would be Ken. And like I love The Cure, but I had never heard Pornography before Ken was like, let's cover Cold. And I want to say that was probably in 93 when we covered that song. And then like it went over so well, like because we were like, this really sounds good. Like we have to do this whole record. So that record had been in the works in one form or another since like 1993, 94. Like, but at the times, when we were a full-time band, we were pretty much between Battery and Damnation and Better Than 1,000, like pretty much always on tour.
Hmm.
And so we just didn't have the ability to record it. And then suddenly, just I'm trying to think what facilitated getting back into that. Um, yeah, I think Ken was just like, hey, I think, I pretty much have the drums. He used a drum machine and the guitars. Like I'm pretty much, I think it was just random. He had been working on it, was like, yo, you got to come down and do vocals. And so it took a couple years of recording, me getting down there, him. At first, we were just going to do a drum machine, but then he wanted a live drummer. So there was just lots of back and forth. And our friend Clint, he worked at Victory. Like he was the one who signed us to Victory. Um, he has always been, he's such a beautiful person. And that's where, where I feel so lucky, like meeting some of these people, like just I've worked with such incredible people over the years, and that's I'm so thankful. But yeah, he just decided, like he was like, okay, I'll put this out. And so it was a little bit stressful because Ken is such a perfectionist. It took him a long time to get it exactly the way he wanted. And as I mentioned before, Ken can kind of when he's writing a song, he can hear it from beginning to end. And um, so it took him a long time to get it to the way he wanted it. And then once he did, I was like, okay, finally. But yeah, we had been working on that in terms of, just scratch tracks for so long. And it was incredible to finally have that out.
If you could do an album that like you personally wanted to like recreate in terms of like making it more hardcore, metalcore sounding, is there an what album would you pick?
Ooh, you know,
You can pick
see,
a few if that's easier.
well, no, like my thing is like I don't, Ken, and that's where, Ken has this vision of, okay, he can see things, but I would love to do like Rites of Spring, like the Rites of Spring album or like Swizz. But but the thing is, the way in my head, I can't. Like, there's not much we could do to make those better. And I'm not
Hmm.
saying we made Pornography better, but we made it in our own way. Whereas
Yeah,
if we did,
absolutely.
let's say we did Swizz, like it would pretty much be like a Swizz cover,
Yeah.
and but because Sean Brown, the singer of Swizz, is like one of the people that I wanted to emulate when I started the band. I was like, I want to sound like Sean, and so yeah, but oh my God, that would be hard. But I would, uh, let's just say Swizz.
So I like too with like pornography because like I love The Cure. Like I still tell people that's probably like I saw them like 2, 3 years ago, and vocally he is probably one of the best singers I've ever heard live. He sounds like the record, like it's absolutely crazy.
Yeah,
But
did you see him in Philly?
yeah, Wells
Yep.
Fargo.
Yep, we were there. Oh my
That
God.
we
I
went to so
couldn't,
many shows together.
yeah, it's so wild. But that was the first time I ever saw them because
Mhm.
it was one of those things like growing up, I just didn't like big concerts. I
Mhm.
liked more small, intimate venues, punk shows, like crowd interactions. So I had no interest in seeing The Cure until now. I like sitting down at shows more than I like
Same.
standing up. So we went and you, it was perfect. Oh my God, they
Yeah.
were so great. And yeah, I just yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, it was crazy. Like visually it was fantastic. And like I think if I'm pretty sure he played like almost like 2 hours. At least it felt like it. Like he played a
It was
long set
almost
list.
3 hours. It was
Yeah.
like two hours and 45 minutes or something.
Yeah, and every single song sounded just like the record. Like
Yeah.
that was awesome.
And I love Twilight Sad and
Hmm.
like the band that opened, and their drummer played for this band, the Frightened Rabbit, that I absolutely love. And if you're into checking out something that's a little bit
Absolutely.
different, definitely check out Frightened Rabbit. Heartbreak, I would look into like the story and the lyrics and the story of the singer. It's heartbreaking. And but it's they're such a wonderful band.
Is
So
it
definitely
hardcore or new wave?
no, it's I always say they're the Scottish version, a Scottish mix of Elliott Smith and Counting Crows.
Well, I'm
Um,
fans of both
you
of
know,
those, so that would work.
oh my God, yeah. I love both of them. But it's yeah, their lyrics are just they hurt. Reminds me of the same feelings I got from listening to Rites of Spring of just sad. Yeah, it's wonderful.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really do appreciate it, Mike.
No problem, and I apologize we didn't get to talk about DC at all.
Oh, fair enough. Well, we'll
Uh,
have to I'll have to have you on again and we'll
I'm
chop it up
sorry, I
about
go on
DC.
tangents. I
No, so do I. So
apologize.
do I. You're all good. Well,
I don't
thank you.
get out much, so when I have to be social, I don't know how to do it.
No,
So
you're all good. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate you coming on, and I hope that whenever you guys announce your next show, I will definitely be there.
yeah, well, I don't know about Damnation right now, but when Tigers Fight, we're getting ready to record a new EP.
Oh, that's
Uh,
awesome.
I at first I was like, no, I'm not interested, and then I realized like it might be one of the few times I have the opportunity to record with my brother. So we're going to be going down to Baltimore and recording with him. Um, and he just finished the End It record a little bit ago, and not who else did Angel Dust. So
Oh, I'm
he
excited
did.
for that record.
Yeah, so he did both of those, and and I'm like, I want him to record us, so or
Yeah.
record me. So I'm gonna, but I'm sure we'll see you at the Koyo show.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know when that is, but we're going to there. We're going to Fiddlehead, and there's something else. Oh, Touche Amore. We bought tickets for that. So
Gotcha. Wait, is Fiddlehead, is that the one at Maggie's or wait, no.
what?
It's
That's somewhere in like Lakewood. I don't. Amber bought the tickets, so I'm
Oh,
not
it's
sure.
in Lakewood?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably at Maggie's then.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they said it was a really small venue.
Yeah, it's super cool.
I love Fiddlehead. Pat is just an inspiration to me. He inspires me to because he's such a good person. So I'm really excited to see them.
Yeah, me too. I saw them for the first time they're actually one of my also first hardcore shows. It was them and Angel Dust and Drug Church. It
At
was a really good
TLA.
lineup. I same tour, but I went to in Harrisburg.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, HMAC.
Yeah, we saw him at the TLA.
Oh wait, was that
Just
with Turnover?
I don't remember.
It was
I
like probably 2 years ago.
Yeah,
I was
right
there.
around.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I was there too. It was Angel
Yeah.
Dust, Fiddlehead, and Turnover.
Yeah, so we were there, and I really like Angel Dust. Like I think Justice is so talented,
Hmm.
that that like I'm so impressed by those Baltimore bands like Turnstile and Angel Dust and End It, and I don't know, there's something in the water down there. So
Absolutely.
but
Well,
but yeah, let me know, if you have any more questions, anything at all, or if you want to hear about random music, I can share anything with you. As I said, I love sharing with people who want to learn about it. So
absolutely. Well, thank you again. Guys, there'll be a ton of links below. Okay. Make sure to check out everything. Now we're finally on Apple Music. So, well, this will be on Spotify, Apple Music, or Apple Podcast, and YouTube. Thanks again, guys. Have a good day.